Good to see you.
So good to see you. How is everything?
Oh, thank you. I need to tell you that I'm a bit nervous about it. I couldn't sleep at night. I was so excited about
Oh,
our
stop it.
conversation.
Are you
Really?
serious?
Yes, I am.
There's nothing to be nervous. It's going to be fun. We're going to have a
Yeah.
blast. It's going to be fun. So, you're the boss.
All
You're the
right.
boss. You tell me whatever you want to talk about and we'll just jam out and have fun.
Super perfect. Then, okay, I will start that this is my podcast. It's calling in Polish language Spektrum Rozwoju Fit. It's called, in English, it is Spectrum of the Growth Fitness. And this is also the name of my company. And today I have a great guest, Jordan Syatt. Jordan, yes, I'm so happy to have you.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Jordan, you are one from the most impactful person for my business, for my mindset, and for my fitness as well. And I am so happy to have you, really.
That means a lot to me, really. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here and I appreciate you immensely. So, thank you.
Thank you. But I will introduce you to my audience. That Jordan Syatt, you are the online fitness coach, personal trainer, and you are still working with Gary Vaynerchuk.
Correct. Still working.
Yes,
Yep.
still working. Yes. You and Mike Vacanti, I love you and him so much. Yeah,
We
you're
love
my,
you.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, both of you are my mentors in online fitness business mentorship. Yeah, it's a long name.
Your English is amazing. It's
Oh,
incredible.
thank
It
you.
really is.
Yeah, it was about 4 years since I came back from England, and I was working abroad as well before in
Got it.
tourism. Yeah,
Got it. Got it. Got it.
yeah. Oh, thank you. Then Jordan, yeah, I want to ask you for so many questions that maybe I will start from the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever questions you want.
All right. I want to ask you about the fitness, about this that from the beginning, from the young year that you was very much excited about the fitness. That you know from the beginning that you want to be a coach, that you want to involve your life with working with the other people and with the fitness. Or you
Yeah,
was
so
yeah.
so I got an internship, a personal training internship when I was 14 years old, and I was a wrestler. I was a wrestler at the time, and I wanted to get the internship so that I could benefit myself in terms of I wanted to learn how to get stronger. I wanted to learn how to strength train properly. I wanted to learn more about nutrition and the science of it. But through the internship, I ended up loving coaching. And I ended up, my first ever client was a 68-year-old man named Fred who had really bad shoulder problems. And his only goal was to be able to pick up his grandson without hurting his shoulder or without hurting his back. And as a 14-year-old kid, that was a huge amount of perspective and a big perspective shift for me. Because most people, they just want to look good naked. And at that point, like, I was 14. I was like, I wanted to have abs and I wanted to be strong and a good wrestler, and that was it. So to hear that someone was going to the gym for something completely outside of that was very important for me. It was very powerful for me, and I realized that I wanted to become the best coach for Fred. And that's really when I got very passionate about it. It was like, I want to be a great coach for other people. Like
Yeah, if we
what?
can start with the food anxiety, about thinking that we can change about two subjects, good food, bad food, and we both know that this is not like that, yeah.
Yeah, I think that through the process of trying to educate more people on nutrition, because if we look at at least in the United States, from what I can tell from 40, 50, 60 years ago, there wasn't as much of a focus on quality nutrition or nutrition for health. There wasn't as much of a focus on it. You could smoke in schools back then, right? It was like, it wasn't as big of a priority. I think through the process of educating people about nutrition and about the health benefits of exercise and food and whatever, we've gone to the extremes of, all right, well, this is good and this is bad. And that's generally how I think people tend to approach research, right? Where it's like, okay, so we're going to do this, and we're going to find the method that is the best, and everything else is not the best. And it's sort of like when you look at things on paper like that, it almost makes sense. It's like, oh, okay, well, sweet potatoes they have like more fiber, they're slower digesting, they fill you up more. Like, okay, well, sweet potatoes are healthier. Period. They're just like, they'll just say that. Like, sweet potatoes are healthy. That must mean that white potatoes are not healthy. And it's a flawed logic. And it's flawed reasoning. But it's a very easy mindset for humans to get into. It's like, this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong. Unfortunately, that's led to a lot of food anxiety. Because when you tell someone, it's like, okay, well, this is good for you and this is bad for you, when they are inevitably faced with the choice or faced with the situation in which, number one, they don't have that food available, and or they're just not at a point in their life where they are willing or want to make those choices, it will create fear and anxiety around that food, which is why it's really important to, number one, like, I'll say this, if there were good and bad foods, I would say it. I would, like, if factually that was an issue, I would say, yeah, there are good and bad foods. The reality, though, is there isn't good and bad foods, because we have to, number one, it's like, okay, what is a bad food? Like, we have to define it. Like, what is a bad food? What does that mean? And usually the definitions that people will come up with, well, it does more harm for your health than good. I'm like, okay, so give me an example. And they'll be like, oh, well, okay, well, like a Twinkie. Twinkie's always the answer, right? A Twinkie, like, it does no positive benefits. There's no nutrients involved. And there's it's very high fat, very high sugar, and like a lot of like different hormonal responses, blah, blah, blah. And they usually use this from their perspective of like, and that's not good for your health. But these are the same people who are going out of their way to talk about how important mental health is. And I'm always like, why would you just assume having the Twinkie is inherently bad for your health and completely neglect the mental health aspect of it? Because what if one person will never ever eat a Twinkie, not because they think it's bad, but because it gives them an enormous amount of anxiety? That's not healthy. And I would argue that a person who can eat a Twinkie in moderation without getting anxiety and then get back on track is a healthier individual than someone who avoids it at all costs in every social situation simply because they're scared it's going to do more harm than good. And so this is where I think it's important to educate people on, number one, what does good and bad mean, and get a much more encompassing idea of health, because health is not just what's going on here, it's also what's going on here. And that affects so many different people in so many different ways. One of my favorite quotes is, for one person, eating a slice of pizza, or for one person, I'm sorry, I messed up the quote, for one person, not eating a slice of pizza could be progress because they need to get a better handle on their calories and start focusing on more whole nutrient-dense foods. For another person, eating the slice of pizza could be progress if they don't have anxiety with it, and if it doesn't make them binge, and if they don't feel guilty or shameful for it. So literally the same food can have two different health effects on two different people, just based on where they are emotionally, physically, spiritually, if you want to get into that. There's so many aspects of it. So that's where it's a sort of a long-winded answer to, like, yeah, I think food anxiety stems from this demonization of foods, when the reality is there's no such thing as a good or bad food.
Oh, indeed. And I want to ask you also about your Big Mac challenge, because we was talking about it in our mentorship. And after, when you start to do your Big Mac challenge, I started to do my McNuggets challenge and McDonald's challenge, and I started to drink Coke with it for 30 days. And my background is like that before I was eating like a vegan and a raw vegan, even though for something about 7 years. But since 2016, I started to eat flexible dieter. And plenty of people plenty of my friends, they start to, yelling about me, and they start to be so much upset with me because they say that I start to promote unhealthy food and all of this stuff with anxiety, you know, about the food. And for me, it was huge lesson. Yeah, I was so in one moment upset with these people, and I start to look inside of me and, all right, Anna, you was doing like that before. Yeah, it's a good lesson.
Yes, I love that. And I love how you turned it on yourself. And you're like, wow, I was doing that before. And like that's all part of growth and improving not only as a coach, but as a person. For you to say, like, to see how these people were treating you and realizing, oh my God, that's what I used to be doing. Yeah. One thing I always say is, like, if you're not looking back every 6 months to a year and being like, oh fuck, I was an idiot back then you're not getting better. And it's really important. And a lot of people, they just, whatever they believe, and they're very resistant to change, and they're not open-minded. And it's funny, I think the people who are generally the least open-minded and the most resistant to change are the ones who are most vocal about the importance of being open-minded and the importance of being open to change.
Yeah, indeed. And what was with you? I mean, about the challenge, with the Big Mac challenge, you was having plenty of conversation with the people on your Instagram, on your Facebook, and most of them, the people in the beginning with you, it was the same, that the people was upset because you were going every day on your scale, you was going every day to eat your McDonald's, and since in the end of the challenge you was losing your fat, and it was so good. And it was so open-minded for sure for you and for all of your audience.
I think I'm very happy with how it came out. I didn't expect it to have such a huge impact. There were people who, I mean, you could go through the comments and you can always tell who watched the video versus who didn't, just simply based on the comment. Because I think I said in that video at least 6 to 10 times, I'm not telling you to eat Big Macs. I'm not telling you Big Macs are healthy. I'm not promoting Big Macs. I'm not suggesting that you add Big Macs into your diet. The only reason I'm doing this is to show you that if and when you want to incorporate treats into your diet, you can, and not only not lose progress, but you can actually make progress throughout that process. And there will always be people who try and take you down, try and discredit you, who just disagree with you, and that's okay. It's totally fine for them to disagree. Generally speaking, though, I found that the people who are open-minded enough to actually listen and to see what you're saying and hear you out completely, even if they don't agree with what you're doing, they can at least be respectful about it, and they can understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And also I want to ask you about your bodybuilding, because you are having right now your coach, you are building your muscles, and I want to ask about, and also huge shift for you, because before you was working out mostly for this exercise like squat, like deadlift, like power lifter, and right now, your body is changed. I probably your mindset a bit is changed with all of this subject. How this affects you as a coach, as a human?
So it's a great question. I competitively powerlifted from about 18 years old to 24, 25 years old. So my life in that time frame was all powerlifting, and I didn't miss a single training session. Like, for that entire time frame I worked out, I didn't miss a workout. And I very much associated myself as a powerlifter for a number of reasons. Number one is, like, my goal was powerlifting focused. And that was like what I strived for. I wanted to hit a 4 times body weight deadlift, but also it's what I wrote about. It's what I studied. It's everything in my mind was how to lift as much weight as possible in these 3 lifts. That's all I thought about. And that's all that I sort of made training out to be. And when I eventually pulled 4 times body weight, I deadlifted 535 at 132. And I remember I put the barbell down and I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm tired. I'm achy. I reached my goal. Thank God. I just don't want to do this anymore. And there was a very difficult time period in which I was like, well, if I'm not training for powerlifting, what am I doing? And is that okay? Like, is it okay to not train like a powerlifter? Is it okay to not lift as heavy as possible? Because that's what I'd written about, and that's what I'd done for so many years. And I was like a little bit like an existential crisis. Like, what am I doing? Is this okay? And I had a probably a period of about 6 months in that time frame that I was really struggling with it. And I hired a coach at that point, and I did a lot of work, and it was great. More recently, though, and so that was several years ago. More recently, though, I coached Gary Vaynerchuk for 3 years, and I let my fitness go to shit because I was coaching him and traveling all over the world. And I was like, you know what? After about 6 months of like really stressing myself out coaching Gary, I was like, fuck this. Like, I'm just not going to care. Like, I remember just being like, I'm just not going to care. I was like, I just really said fuck it to exercise, did very minimal exercise. I was like, well, if I'm going to eat like shit, I might as well enjoy it. So like I ate like shit and I enjoyed it. And then near the end of my time with Gary, about the last 6 months or so, I remember actually when Rico first came, I was like, I need to get my shit together. I was like, I need to start actually doing this. And it was funny because the first goal was to hit a 405 deadlift again. Because I hadn't done that in a long time. And that was like the first training goal that I had in literally years. And that was actually, if you really look back, like the catalyst for me to get back into my fitness. I wasn't outrageously consistent. Like I was probably around like 70% consistent, but 70% compared to 0% was a massive improvement. And as I've gone on for essentially, it's been almost a year. It'll be a year in January since that. I've become way more consistent. I mean, in terms of, I hired a bodybuilding coach. I hired Paul Carter, and I'm training like at least 3 times a week bodybuilding, at least, usually more, usually 4 times a week, and doing jujitsu at least once or twice a week at least. And finally feeling like my fitness is getting up to be like higher level, not high level, but higher level. And the bodybuilding training is very cool for me because I haven't really done it before. It's a whole new style of training. It's a whole new mindset. It's I will say it's very interesting though. Paul has a very powerlifting style approach to bodybuilding in terms of, he's not a big volume guy. He doesn't want you doing a ton of sets and a ton of reps. He's more focused on getting 1 or 2 sets at a very high intensity with really good technique. So it's sort of like, you could compare it. We're not doing deadlifts or squats, but we could do lat pull downs, right? You're doing a lat pull down. If you're going to do a set of 8, then that set of 8 is going to be fucking hard, like really hard. And so hard that you're not going to want to do another set of them. Whereas a lot of more typical bodybuilding approaches are say, okay, so you're going to do 6 sets of 8. And it's just a lot higher volume and not as high intensity. You're not lifting as heavy. Whereas Paul's like, I want you to do 1 or 2 sets and you're done with that exercise. I want you completely done. And it does a lot of things. Number one is it helps in terms of, it reduces your risk of injury because you're not doing as many reps and putting the joints under so much stress. Number 2 is it prevents a lot of nervous system fatigue because you get several stimulating reps in, just enough to actually stimulate muscle growth, and then you're out. And you're not spending an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours in the gym. You're in the gym in and out in 30, 40 minutes max. And it's really refreshing. So I'm enjoying it.
Oh, perfect. And what about your stress level? Do you have some kind of way to reduce your stress? Because you are extra busy man. Yeah, I can see it from all of this impact which you are putting inside of your work, of your social media, of also our group. And do you have some way to reduce your stress?
It's really interesting. I think one of the ways that I reduce my stress without actively trying is just by surrounding myself with people who don't stress me out.
Perfect. Yeah.
I think it's really, really important to understand. My environment is so positive and optimistic and encouraging and supportive. It's hard to articulate. And I talk to other people and they tell me how toxic their life is and how terrible people are in their lives. And I'm like, why are you choosing to be with these people? Like, never mind a work environment, which is equally, if not more stressful. Like, if you're in a job in which like you can't get out of because you have to support your family. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about your friends. I'm talking about the people that you hang out with on the weekends. I'm talking about the people that you're texting with. I'm talking about your partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever. People are hanging out with people that they don't even like. They're hanging out with people that make them feel like shit. And then that makes them question everything they're doing. It makes them think they're not good enough. And it perpetuates all this shit going up in here. But what's so funny is when people come and hang out with me and Rico and Mike and Susan, they're always like, I want to stay here. It's like, yeah, because we all fucking love each other and we're always building each other up and going out of our way to compliment each other and notice the positive as opposed to like tearing each other down or whatever. And it's like people are shocked at the amount of positivity and positive vibes, if you want to call it that, between us. Whereas I think so many people, they're majorly stressed out. I don't think it's as much of a lack of sleep. Some people need more sleep. Some people do. I don't think it's too, definitely not overtraining. Very few people are overtraining. Very few. I don't think it's as much nutrition. I think environment is really what the fuck is stressing people out. And work is a huge part of it. But I would never say just leave, because like, unless you have that opportunity, unless you're fortunate enough to have that opportunity. But what it might mean is taking steps to get to a point in which 2, 3, 4, 5 years you can leave. But I think the environment that people are willingly putting themselves in every single day is really what's stressing people out.
All right. Yeah. I love your environment. I want to ask you also about the person, about the book, about the movie or music, which is the most impactful for you. Do you have your favorite book? I know that I asked you before about it. Yes, you asked you, and you, in the mentorship.
Which book did I tell you before?
You didn't tell me about the one, because when I asked Mike, he told me about Jordan Peterson, and you didn't say. You say something about the historical book.
Got it. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Black Like Me. Yeah. Black Like Me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Black Like Me is a phenomenal book. It's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite all-time books. It's basically just about a white guy I believe it was in the 1950s or something, who literally tinted his skin to look African American, and then he went into the Deep South, into Mississippi and all these areas, and pretended to be black and lived the life of a black man. But what he would do is, one day he would go out and he'd be a black man and walk the street and he'd document what happened. And then he'd go out as a white man the following day and he'd document what happened. And it's unbelievable. It's a really tremendous.
I will read this book. Yeah. Thank you.
And so that's one of my favorites. I would say The Power of Moments is a great one. I would say Made to Stick is a great one, and they're by the same authors, Chip and Dan Heath. They have a very scientific approach to behavior and psychology. And so those books are fantastic. They're very well written, fun to read, and really research-based. I like them a lot. Made to Stick is probably one of the best books I can recommend for content creators, if you want to like make more content that people can really resonate with. And then I would say The Power of Moments is very good, really for anybody, whether you want to create a very special moment for your husband or wife or partner or classmates or whatever it is, or if you're a business owner and you want to create a very special moment for your clients or your customers or your employees. There's like anybody can benefit from that book. So those are probably my favorite books.
And what about the music, and what about the most impactful person in your life? Is this Gary or maybe some other person?
Let's see. I would say, so for music,
Post Malone. Yeah, I can find plenty of Post Malone in your Instagram.
People message me all the time being like, every time I hear that song, I immediately think about you stepping on the scale.
Me too.
Music, it's interesting. I'm not like tied down to any one specific. I mean, I listen to everything from like really hard rock, like very, very hard, like crazy stuff, all the way to like super soft, like Coldplay. So like, I mean, I'll say like, I do really enjoy music that's going to make me happier. Like that's going to be in it. It's more like softer, good mood type stuff, like sun rising, just like enjoying and relaxing, like calming myself. But when I'm working out, I want some more hard rock for sure. In terms of most influential person, that would be for sure my mom. And it's a very cliche answer, but it's true. She raised my brother and I by herself. And she dealt with a lot of shit, like a lot of shit. And I knew some of the stuff going on, but I didn't know some other really big stuff going on. And I'm sure I still don't. Like, she doesn't want me to find out, but I eventually find out about certain things. And I'll remember, like, there was one time when I was in elementary school where she was working and she got laid off from her job, but I had no idea. Like, I had no idea. Like, I didn't know. What she would do is she would take my brother and I to school early for like this before school program for parents that had to go to work, and I would assume she was going to work. She was like, all right, going to work. And what she would actually do is she would go to the library and she was applying to jobs, and she was like trying to like creating a new resume, and like it was a really difficult time in the economy. And so I had no idea. She would just spend all day at the library doing that and then come back and get us. And like I was like third grade, so like I wasn't like questioning her and shit, but like to think that she went through that and I had no idea is insane to me. And it's one of those things. I think one of the things I really struggle with is if I'm like struggling with anxiety or nerves, like people can, especially people that know me, they can read me, like they know something's wrong, and it's something I want to improve on in terms of like, even if I'm dealing with something, I need to be able to separate that from what's going on and just go all in with what I'm doing. And I think she does that incredibly well.
Perfect. Yeah. And finally, one question more I want to ask, and it was about one advice. If you can give yourself advice when you was 15 years younger, that what advice will be?
Oh man. So 15 years ago, I was what, yeah. 13? I would say advice that I would give myself at 13. I would say I'm trying to figure out how to frame it because I have the answer. I'm going to frame it from the perspective of what I see going on in society and in culture, and say like why I would say this, because I know I used to be this way, and I think I've become a lot better at this now. And I think it's very important. I see a lot of people in culture and society, on social media, whatever. If something comes out about somebody doing something bad or wrong or whatever, everybody jumps on them. And everybody's just so quick to judge them and hate them and tear them down and say, what an asshole, what a terrible person. And it doesn't even just have to be on social media. Like, it could be in your friend group. It could be like wherever you are. It could be at the gym. And like just you hear one thing about someone and immediately like you discredit everything they've ever done. One tweet someone made 10 years ago. And when I was younger, I think I was very quick to just judge people and be like, oh, what an asshole, but as if I've never done anything wrong, as if I've never lied, as if I've never made a mistake, as if I haven't done things that I immensely regret, that I've never hurt anybody. Like, get the fuck off your high horse. Stop judging people. Like, we all do shit we shouldn't do. We all do shit that we regret. And I would tell myself, hey, you're going to do some shit that you really wish that you didn't do. So before you go and judge other people and tear them down, you better give yourself a hard look in the mirror and think about how you would like people to treat you when something happens. Because you're not giving people the grace that they need and they deserve. And if you don't start, then why the fuck are people going to give you the grace that you need and you deserve when you need it most? So that's what I would tell my 13-year-old self.
It's beautiful, yeah. Thank you very much, Jordan. You are one from the kindest, the smartest person I know. Thank you very much for this conversation.
Of course. Thank you for having me. This was a blast. I really appreciate it.